This type of concept of inner conflict or conflict within a whole has been around for quite some time. I'm going to give you an explanation, kind of like a lecture, and I'm going to do some demos. Some people have volunteered to go through this parts integration process. When we think about what is important about integration, to answer that question, why is integration so important? We go to the problem, and the problem is internal conflicts. When you feel conflicted about something, when you feel like you're fighting yourself, when you're at war with yourself. And I'm very qualified to speak on this because I feel like most of my, probably from my teenage years through most of my adult life, I was at war with myself. Even when I was doing things that were supposedly healthy. To give you an example of what I mean, I actually injured myself doing yoga. And when I look back on it, and a lot of people think that's very, not funny, but strange that you could injure yourself doing yoga. And it's like, well, you can injure yourself doing absolutely anything if you're doing it the wrong way. And so it's supposed to be this rather peaceful practice or rather integrative practice. But because I was at war with myself, I found a way to injure myself. The problem is the internal conflicts and how they limit your potential and your fulfillment. This fighting with yourself, this using willpower, using discipline, or even parenting ourselves. A lot of times when we become adults, we don't really know how to function in the world without some sort of authority system above us. And we're so used to having grown up with parents that what I often see when I'm coaching clients is people who are parenting themselves. People who say, well, I need more discipline. If I had more discipline, then I would be able to accomplish the things that I want. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, well, when you say that word discipline, what do you think of? And they'll often say, well, I think of my parents disciplining me or punishing me. And I'll say, okay, so is that the kind of relationship you want to have with yourself? Do you think that that's the best relationship to have with yourself to get you to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish and to live the life that you want to live? And obviously they say right away, well, no. So this comes from a place of one part acting as a parent and one part acting as a child. And then you do this disciplining thing, this disciplining of yourself. When I bring up these things about willpower and discipline, that first of all, they're not necessary, they're indicative of internal conflicts. And then to engage in discipline and willpower, to will yourself to do something, implies that you're having to fight yourself, that you're having to beat part of yourself into submission. That's not the integration. That's the opposite of integration. There's a tremendous amount of information out there in personal development, though, that tells you to do exactly that. There's a part of you that's trying to sabotage you. And because of that, you need to go to war with that part, and you need to fight that part, and you need to defeat that part of yourself. This is just really destructive, and it takes us in the opposite direction of what we want. Integration is wholeness, bringing yourself together, unifying yourself, resolving these internal conflicts so that going at what you want, going at life in a divided way, you're going at life and all the things that you want in a unified way from a place of wholeness, which is then makes way for fulfillment. When you experiencing fulfillment, that is the unification of yourself. It's bigger than just happiness. It's bigger than just peace. It's bigger than just joy. It's bringing it all together. And the only way you can do that is through integration, not through fighting yourself. Early on in NLP, you had this guy, Richard Bandler, who had this amazing ability to sort of model what these therapists were doing, Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir, to start off with. Later, it was Milton Erickson. And he wasn't even sure how he was able to do this. It was just one of his gifts. He's a brilliant modeler, but couldn't code how he was doing. And that's when they brought John Grinder in. And John Grinder, being a linguist, he was really good at coding processes and finding what was the code, the structure of the model. He would watch Bandler, and then they would also work with Virginia Satir, and they would watch videos of Fritz Perls. And what they started to see was that these therapists were labeling parts of the people. And this was a useful way to understand what was going on with people who were in conflict with themselves, who were struggling for some reason or experiencing a lot of resistance, which was, creates that friction and that frustration and that fighting with themselves. So most of our problems stem from this. And so they were noticing that the therapist would label the parts, which is an interesting way to, first of all, identify what was going on. Also, if you call it a part, then the entire person isn't bad. There's just this one part that needs some help. It opens things up to, well, I'm not a bad person. I just have something here that needs to be resolved. They never invalidated those parts. They never said, oh, you need to overcome that, or you need to destroy that part of you. It was never that way in what these therapists were doing. In fact, they were doing just the opposite. The assumption was that the part had a positive intention. The part always has value. The part is always trying to do something to lead you toward more fulfillment. The problem is that the part has become disconnected from the whole and isolated. Therefore, one hand, in a sense, is not talking to the other hand, even though both hands are part of the same body. So what was the solution to that? Well, find out what is the part trying to do and assuming positive intention. And from there, you can integrate that part into the whole and become whole again. And then there's not a problem anymore. There's no friction. And you can see this in the world. If you think about times in the world where, a line is drawn in the ground and they say, okay, now this is this country and now this is this other country. Right away, that creates some instability. Now, that doesn't automatically imply that both countries are going to go to war with each other, but it does create that instability that they could, because now they're perceived as two separate parts. There's that instability of, well, maybe we're better than the other, or we're feeling inferior than the other, or we're feeling like we're not being treated well by the other. And then we start to have that conflict. And the same thing happens internally with us. It often happens when you experience a negative emotion. And a lot of this occurs very early in life. So we are hardwired to pull away from pain. This is part of our survival, right? If I touch a hot stove, my hand is going to jerk back before I even think about it. It's just a natural reflex, right? Well, what happens when we experience mental or emotional pain? We try to pull away from it, but we can't. It's happening inside of us. We can't pull away from it. So what do? We create a way of trying to isolate it so that we don't feel it anymore. We try to buffer it. We try to deaden it. We try to numb it. We try to repress it because it's painful. And we think if we can push it away, disconnect from it, then that will give us the relief from the pain that we're looking for. But that ends up creating a bigger problem. You can't really get rid of it. It's a part of you. And so when you pull away from it and you isolate it, you are losing connection with a part of you, which means you also lose connection with whatever resources are in that part of you. So you will feel less whole. And this is more painful than the emotion itself, this idea of disconnecting from yourself, this illusion that we create of separation. And by the way, I truly believe that when it comes to your Eastern philosophies and Zen Buddhism and non-duality, this is exactly what they're talking about resolving. It's not about trying to not have a personality or an ego. We're going to have those things. It's just normal. Like we're going to have an idea of ourselves. Right? What we don't want is we don't want these divisions. What we want is to resolve these divisions, to understand and realize and feel that we are one whole person and that the mind and the body are not two separate things. They're one whole. You can't have one without the other. But we often do that. We impose this illusion of separation between mind and body. Anytime we impose these separations, which again are not real, they're illusions, we create instability. And then from that instability, conflict can arise, where these two parts seem to be working against each other. So what often happens is we have what we consciously want. Maybe we set a goal and we have whatever reasons or values attached to achieving that. And then we go to try to move toward it, and then something seems to be holding us back. And we don't know what it is. And this creates frustration. And then we start making up ideas about it. The worst, I think, is that you have a fear of success. When people say that, I'm like, no, you do not have a fear of success. Success meaning wanting to fulfill whatever it is that you're out there to want to fulfill. Trust me, all of your parts, no matter how many there are, all of them want fulfillment. And all of them want to be unified, even though they might not have the full understanding of that. When somebody says, oh, you have a fear of success, well, that means there's no actual solution to it. So you will go chasing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I don't think all people do this. I don't think all personal development gurus do this, but I do believe that some do. They do create problems in the minds of their followers so that they basically set a fire. The person goes to try to put it out because it's not a real fire. They have to go back to the guru and say, would you help me put this fire out? So I used to see this a lot. They would create kind of a riddle and then ask the person to solve the riddle. And when the person can't and they feel stressed about it, and then the person who creates the riddle says, okay, well, here's the answer to the riddle. Well, of course, they always knew the answer to the riddle because they created it. And because the person had a perceived problem, not a real problem, and now this person is helping them be relieved from that, then they attribute some wisdom to this guru, so they go following that guru. So when I hear people say that, well, you have a fear of success, that's what I'm hearing. They're setting a fire and they can put it out. And then when they do, they get all this credit attributed to them, and people will spend thousands of dollars to have this person solve problems that don't really exist. So be very cautious of that. As a result of Bandler and Grinder having greater and greater understanding of what these therapists were doing, which was mostly intuitive for these therapists, which is interesting to think about. They didn't really realize that they were doing parts and parts integration and all these things. And so Bandler and Grinder come along and they start coding this. And as a result of coding it, they created these processes. And these were some of the first NLP techniques and NLP processes. The classic one is the visual squash. If you've done any NLP, you've probably come across this before. If you're a part of our NLP practitioner training, it is included in the training. It's a very, like I said, classical piece of work that is a great learning tool. And once you start learning more and more NLP and you start learning better ways to do things, you'll start to come around to realizing that it is a little crude. So there's better and better ways that we can take a parts integration and more elegantly create that integration. But it's a good tool to learn from. It's a good tool to start from. It's, like I said, it's called the visual squash. And the idea behind it is you have whatever it is that you want. And most of the time, that's what you're conscious of. Whatever the resistance is, that's often what you're not conscious of. You just feel the resistance, but you don't know what's going on there. And this is what makes internal conflict so frustrating. So you start off by saying, okay, well, what is it that you want? And the person will state it and they say, okay, well, imagine that part of you in your hand, and you can choose whatever hand you want. So the person imagines that this is the part of themselves that wants whatever it is that they want to achieve. And then it's good to elicit some values behind that. So let's say I want to buy a new car. And then you would say, okay, well, imagine that part of you, the part of you that wants to buy the new car is sitting here in your hand or standing here in your hand. And then you would ask the part, okay, what is important to you about buying a car? And then maybe the person will say, well, it'll make me happy or be joyful or be exciting. So you want to get some values out of that. And the values are always meta to the thing that you want, the object or the achievement that you want. So if we go meta to that, then we're working in more possibility. It's a broader, more general, less specific. So it enables multiple possibilities of fulfilling those values, not just one possible goal or achievement. Then you say, okay, well, what is stopping you? What is holding you back? And then maybe they'll give a name to that, like, oh, I just have this resistance. We'll just call it resistance. And they say, okay, imagine the resistance is in your other hand. And so you've got the part that wants the goal, and then you have the part that's resisting. And then you go to the part that's resisting and you say, okay, what is your positive intention of resisting? Now, this is a revelation for a lot of people. If you've been doing NLP work, this isn't new to you. But when a person does not know NLP and they have this resistance, and oftentimes they're demonizing it, they're just wanting to destroy it, they don't ever think that there's a positive intention from the resistance. And there absolutely is. There always is. And so we would ask that part, okay, well, what is your positive intention? Now, because this is a resistant part, because this is an unconscious part, it's usually because the person has pushed this part away. And that usually comes from a negation, as in, I don't want. So you go to the resistance and you ask for its positive intention. It's often going to come out stated in the negative, as in what you don't want. This is very common. It doesn't always happen that way, but it's very common to come out that way. And there's not much we can do with a negation. So if you went to a store and a clerk walks up to you and says, can I help you with something? And you say, I don't want socks. The clerk is going to say, okay, well, I won't show you any socks. What do you want? And then you say, well, I don't want shirts. You're going to be there all day, right? When you could just easily say exactly what you want, and the clerk could take you directly to it, and then you could get it, right? So we can't do much with a negation, an away from strategy. We have to know what it is we want to move toward. So we ask the part, okay, if we say, what is your positive intention? What is it you want? And the part says, I don't want to waste money on a car. Maybe that's what it says. And then you would ask the part, okay, what do you want instead? And maybe the part will come out and say, well, I want to spend that money on, let's say, charity. I'd rather spend that money on charity. And you say, okay, well, what is important to you about giving that money to charity? And that part might say, well, generosity and kindness is really important. Okay, great. So we have generosity and kindness. And then we have maybe peace, freedom, whatever it is that the car will give you. And then once you're at these higher values, then you say, okay, is it possible for these values to work together? Can generosity and kindness work with happiness and peace and freedom? And yes, they can. I mean, these are rather general. There's a lot of possibilities here. At that point, once you get both parts see the value in each other, and you might even give it more instructions like, look at each other. Can you see the value in each other? And, can the two of you work together? And once you gain agreement there, then you have the person bring their hands together. And this movement of bringing the hands together is supposed to create the integration. Does it always? No, it doesn't. This is the kind of crude part about it. So the idea behind this is to elicit higher values and then bring it together and just hope that it all works out. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Now, that's one end of the spectrum of parts integration. It's a very basic, classic NLP process. The most elegant and most precise parts integration that I've ever come across, and I would say that it probably exists in NLP, is with the self-concept model that Steve Andreas created, the model that I teach the most. There is transforming what we call an ambiguous quality. And what is an ambiguous quality? Well, it's one of those qualities that say we value, but we don't really feel certain about. So if I was doing a values elicitation with someone and, it's around a goal that they want to achieve, and I say, what will this do for you? What's important to you about this? And the person says, well, I'll feel successful. And I say, okay, good. So that now I know this is the value that they're wanting to fulfill by achieving this goal. What's more important is what they believe about themselves, because what you value, that's what creates self-esteem. That's what creates confidence. If you do this with enough high-level values, meaning you believe you are the qualities that you value, that's where fulfillment is. But if you don't believe that, so if you value success, but you don't believe you are successful, this is going to create suffering. It's also going to limit your potential, not because you don't have the potential, but because you don't believe you have that capability. And this is very painful. This is what creates suffering. This is what creates self-doubt. If I ask the person, are you a successful person? And they say, well, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. And you'll actually see them do that a lot of times with their hands, or they'll move their head back and forth. So what is that? That's a parts problem. That's an internal conflict. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. And like I said, sometimes they'll even use their hands like this. And that's very similar to the visual squash. And I think that's why they use the hands to do that, because a lot of times people will parse this out this way. If a person feels ambiguous about a quality that they value, we know that we have a parts problem and there needs to be an integration. And in the self-concept model, how we do that is by transforming counterexamples, because counterexamples, the times when I wasn't successful, the times that I failed, is competing with the examples of me being successful. And this is where the conflict is happening. So we have a way in the self-concept model of transforming counterexamples and integrating those counterexamples with your success examples, and emphasizing the success examples and de-emphasizing the counterexamples. And so this gives you an overall sense of being a successful person based on true, real information, real lived experience, while also acknowledging the times when you failed. And so some of you might be saying, well, why would you bring the counterexamples of failure into the examples of success? Because when you integrate these, it makes you even stronger in your sense of success. You realize that failure is a part of success. Failure is only feedback. There's no finality in it. And when you mix this information together, what it lets me know is that I can fail as many times as needed and still know that I am a success, because those failures are surrounded with all of my successes. So that just lets me know that failure is a temporary thing. I can fail as many times as I need to. It doesn't stop me from being a successful person. It doesn't stop me from feeling like a successful person and believing that about myself. And if I believe that I'm a successful person, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I believe it, I will look for those opportunities and I will succeed, and I will be undeterred by failures. Because I can, in my database of this quality, failure is built in. And this is also a very healthy way to think about success. And I was having this conversation actually with Mark Andreas, because he was a little concerned about working with people on the value of success. And if you think of success as the opposite of failure, that will be problematic. But if you think of failure as built into success, you bring that together as an integration. Now success becomes something very different, very fulfilling, very rewarding. And it's not about the end result. It's about being successful and doing successful things, your behavior aligning with success, and being unafraid of failure. So that's an amazing integration when you do that. And it's also very precise. So you have the visual squash on one hand, which is rather crude, and you kind of just like putting it all together and just hoping all the parts come together and do their thing. And sometimes that works. There is a very holistic side of your unconscious mind that can often take care of these things, but not always. When you transform an ambiguous quality, if you don't get it first time, you just keep picking away at it and changing and adjusting the details until you do. So it's so precise and it's extremely elegant, and you're guaranteed to succeed at it as long as you keep working at it until the quality feels certain and is fully integrated. Now, the one I want to show you is, I like to call my fast and dirty method. So how this came about is I'd be working with someone on transforming a quality of their identity, and we would run into a roadblock. We would run into some resistance. And I'd go, okay, I'm going to break out this visual squash and do this whole process and this whole technique. And what would often end up happening is, doing the visual squash, the classic integration, it would oftentimes use up the entire coaching session. And these people are paying me good money. I want to move them toward transformation as quickly as possible. And I really don't want to be derailed by having to, every time we run into some resistance, which is inevitable, it's going to happen, have to break out this long technique and just, slam it together, hope it works, and then move on. So I started doing this really simplified version of a parts integration. And that's what you're going to find in the PDF that I've given you. And it was basically, if we're working on transforming a quality, well, we already know what the value is on the one side, right? So if we can go back to the success one, if I value success and I want to be successful and I go to a self-concept coach and they're helping me transform becoming successful or believing I'm successful, and I run into some resistance. So on the one hand, we know the value, success. Okay. Now we go to the resistance and we just ask the resistance, what is your positive intention? And again, it'll often come out stated in the negative, like what it doesn't want. And this is a good one that I can use. I felt broke my whole life as far as money. And I wasn't really, but I felt that way. And when I was working with this part or wanting to transform success, there was a part of me that came up and was resisting. And I was like, okay, so what is your positive intention by resisting me being successful? And the part said, I'm afraid that you will become greedy. If you make a bunch of money, I'm afraid you will become greedy. I see rich people and I look at them a certain way and I think that they're greedy people, or this part did anyway. So I said, okay, well, what do you want me to be instead? And the part said, I want you to be generous. I was like, oh, okay. And so I said, does generosity work with success? Meaning, is it possible that the more successful I become, the more generous I can be? Because I have more to share. That was a revelation. And then, I'm doing this on myself and it's working. I'm starting to bridge this gap. I'm starting to integrate this. So I talk to the part that's resisting and I ask it that, and it says, yeah, that is possible. And then where the integration happens with this process, and it's very important. So you don't want to skip over it. It's in the PDF. You ask the part, not only would it be willing to work with this other part or allow this other part to do what it wants to be successful in this case, would you be willing to play a role in this success by making sure that as I become more successful, I become more generous? Now, of course, you would be plugging in whatever values you're working with the internal conflict. You want to give that part that's trying to fulfill a positive intention for you a role in the bigger process. And that's where the integration really happens, because that's all the part really ever wanted anyway, that it wanted to be a part of the whole, and it wanted to preserve its intention. It wanted to preserve its positive function. It doesn't want you to take away its relevance. It doesn't want you to take away its job. It's trying to do something for you. And in fact, you're the one who gave it the instructions to begin with. It's trying to fulfill that. If you just try to beat it down or you just try to make it irrelevant, you're invalidating part of yourself. So you lose on this. That's not what we want to do. We want to bring it back into the whole. We want to bring each drop of water back to the ocean and to make it an ally, not something that you're fighting against. And how you do that is by finding out what its positive intention is and giving it that role, that job to fulfill that intention along with everything else that you're doing. I've had people break down in tears just by asking that part, would you be willing to take this job and this role and fulfilling that intention? Would you come along with the rest of us? I've had people get very emotional about that because they feel it, that finally they stop fighting themselves and they integrate. It's a really beautiful thing. Real quick, before we get into demonstrations, I was often asked, because I talk about this, one of my first experiences, really profound experiences with NLP was a professor of mine who taught a class called the Philosophy of Psychology. He would go through, in the entire semester, he went through many different therapeutic modalities. And at the end, he broke out NLP. And it was fascinating. It was one of my first real taste of what NLP was. And then later, after I graduated college, I fell into a depression. I didn't have health insurance. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, I'm in a really bad way. I can't afford a therapist. And I believe you can help me." And he called me into his office. And in one hour session, I walked out of there and months of depression was gone. I had been suffering from depression for about 6 to 9 months. I felt like I was in a hole that I couldn't pull myself out of. And in one session, it was gone. And lots of people ask me, what did he do? And what he did was a parts integration. It was a little bit different than the ones you see here, but in principle, it was exactly the same. And so that's how powerful a integration can be. It can literally be the difference of being depressed or not depressed. And so I was in a real fight with myself. I had a part of me that was very dominant, very ambitious, very much wanting to beat down any part of me that was getting in the way. And so there was that sort of creative, more sensitive side of me that had felt beaten up and didn't have a voice. And my professor helped me integrate that, and it was amazing. Depression was gone. And this is why I try to emphasize this so much, to not go to war with yourself, to not try to will yourself, not try to discipline yourself, to integrate. That is the most important thing you can do. Okay, we have some people who have volunteered to do a parts integration here. Now, I want to use the process that I've given you. And it's always possible that when I get into a parts integration, that we kind of we can let the dragon out of the basement, so to speak, and that it turns into a much bigger issue than this simple process can handle. And for that, we do have more complex, deeper processes. Those would have to be a demonstration for another time. So we have 3 people, and we'll try to get to all 3. I don't know that we will, but let's go ahead and find our volunteers. So is it Lucia? Hello again. I've spoken to you before.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you for volunteering.
you're welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so what is it that you're working with now that you have some resistance around?
It's quite similar with the work you've just done. So I don't know if I will go with the same problem, or I have another context area of my life in which I have a lot of parts
Okay.
which are resisting, and it's really something I'm working a lot with the great coaches you have in your training. So I don't know which one to choose.
Okay, so this is we're doing this for the sake of demonstration, not as much coaching, which is so
Yeah.
and so I want to make sure that everybody can see, this process when it works well. And so that's what we're going for here. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most resistance and a big
Mm-hmm.
that, and 1 being very, very small, we want to go with like a 5. We want enough that we can see it and that it's obvious to everyone. At the same time, we don't want to let that dragon out of the basement like I was talking about before.
Okay, I will choose a similar problem from
Okay.
the previous demonstration you did, and it's about being autonomous financially.
So financial autonomy.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would that do for you if you had financial autonomy?
Freedom.
Okay. Anything else?
Freedom to be, to have, to get away from.
Okay. Anything else besides freedom?
Um, yeah, balanced, like balanced,
Oh,
sense of being balanced and grounded,
okay.
aligned with what is really important for me.
And how would you know it if your life was balanced and grounded?
Very good question. I would be able to just listen to my needs and to be connected to what is important for me and not what others are telling me that is important. So just to be more connected.
So you value connection here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So freedom and connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great values. Okay. Now, there's a resistance to this, the financial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's just welcome that resistance. We're not going to try to push it away. We know
Mhm.
that it has something important for you. It is,
Mhm.
at the very least, trying to fulfill a positive intention for you. Another word for positive intention is value.
Mhm.
What does it want for you? Welcome it to this conversation and ask it, what does it want for you?
To stay connected.
Stay connected. Okay. So it didn't come out stated in the negative. That was interesting.
Not this time. Normally it comes with a negative, but not this time. Mm.
So for people watching, that normally doesn't happen. Normally it will come out like the way it came out with for Brandon, I don't want to do the work. Like that's how it'll come out like.
Mm.
And so this did not come out stated in the negative. She went straight to the positive. So that's good. It just takes out one step that I don't have to do. Okay. So I want to learn a little bit more about this because I feel like I need a little more information here. I don't always do this, but when we identify the resistance, but I'm going to go ahead and tap around here to see what else is going on. So this part that wants to stay connected, what
Mhm.
will staying connected do for it?
Is to be aligned with what is important for me.
And what is that? What's important for you?
To be able to listen to my needs.
Okay. And when you're able to listen to your needs, what does that do for you?
The first thing which comes is love,
Nice. What a wonderful value. Okay. Very nice.
which is very complicated to reach.
Well, you have it inside of you. It's always there, always accessible.
Yeah, but how complicated it is to make a distinction between being someone who loved and being lovable.
Okay.
Complicated.
Okay. We could go off in a different direction here.
Yeah.
I don't want to do, but what I would say, just as a piece of something that you can try, what would it be like to remove that distinction between being loving and lovable? If
Mm.
loving means you're also lovable, and that being lovable also means that you're loving.
It's another part integration process I could
But it sounds
work
like,
on.
yes,
Yeah,
but it sounds,
totally.
and that one might be a little more,
So yeah, complicated and deep.
yeah.
Not
Okay.
the moment.
But very well worth your time to work on because
Yeah,
of this
totally.
such a powerful value and so fulfilling. So I would definitely work on that. Okay.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you.
So you're welcome. So this part wants to be connected, and does it want to be more loving? Does it want more love? What does it want with love?
More love.
Just more love. Okay, that
Yeah.
works. Okay. So the other part wants freedom and connection.
Mhm.
The resistant part wants connection and love.
And clarity.
Okay, clarity is a good one. So does freedom and connection work with connection, love, and clarity? Do they oppose each other or are they compatible?
Totally compatible.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
easy. Yeah.
so easy.
I think you kind of felt that inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now that does this part realize this? The part that has been resisting, does it now realize that the values it wants to fulfill are compatible with the values of having financial autonomy, which is freedom and connection?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it willing to go forward with this financial autonomy and even more important than that, fulfilling these values of freedom, connection, love, and clarity? Is it willing to go along with that?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And not only that, would it be willing to take on a role here that as you work toward financial autonomy, that the role it plays is to make sure you do it with love, with connection, and with clarity?
Mhm.
Wonderful. So it's willing to play that role?
Yeah.
Great. So when you think about working toward financial autonomy, now,
Mhm.
is there any objection to it?
Not really.
Okay, I don't like that answer.
Okay, I
I
know,
like that.
I
No, no,
know that you don't like that answer.
well,
It's just that
it's not that I don't like it. It's that we're not done. That maybe I should restate that. So then the not really is not really
it's
convincing.
not a real, it's not a
So
body not
right.
answer.
So
Totally.
is this a different part that's objecting, or is it the same part and there's needs to be more that we need to find here?
No, it's not that another part. It's more an internal dialogue that is coming from certainly an imprint or something else. I
Let's
don't know.
let's not judge it too quickly. So there's a not really there. So let's get in touch with the not really,
Hmm.
because that means there's something there.
Yeah.
And we want to honor that part. It's a valid part of you. Okay.
Hmm.
It might seem to be working against you right now, but we know better than that. We know that it has a positive intention for you. We know that it's a valid part of you. It's a valid part of you that is trying to do something positive for you. It's trying to fulfill a value for you. So just ask it,
Hmm.
what is it trying to do for you? What does it want you to know?
But I don't depend on others.
So it doesn't want you to depend on others, or what is it saying?
Yeah, this part is telling me that what I've heard a long time ago is not reality, but just statements that I shouldn't follow
So what does it want for you?
to overcome that limiting beliefs.
It wants you to overcome a
That
limit.
limiting belief of not being able to be financially autonomous.
So there's a belief that you can't be financially autonomous,
Yeah,
and this part wants you to overcome that belief.
yeah,
So this doesn't sound like it's resisting you having financial autonomy. Is it more about it just recognizing that you have a belief about this?
yeah, totally.
Okay. So this might turn into something bigger, but
Different. Yeah.
let's just find out a little bit more. So what is the belief that you have about financial autonomy?
that it's a voice, a memory from the past that is popping up and just telling me that it's not possible for me to have this financial autonomy.
Now you keep gesturing with your right hand next to your right ear. Is that where the voice is coming from?
Yeah.
Okay. So pull the voice around to the front of you so you can see who this voice belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recognize the person?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Um, and so sometimes just by recognizing the person, I'm not saying this is the experience you're having, but sometimes, like I remember doing this one time and I pulled a voice around because it was behind me. And it was a voice that was really holding me back because I wasn't conscious of it. And when I became conscious of it, I was like, now I can do something with it. And I pulled it around to the front. It was my first grade teacher. And I was like, I cannot believe I let my first grade teacher
Mm.
live rent free, still here and holding me back. And as soon as I saw it, it just seemed too ridiculous. So I was like, the voice
Yeah.
here. Now, sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So when you see this voice, who this voice belongs to, what do you feel about this? Is this kind of like, this is meaningless, or does this have a place in your life?
Both at the same time.
Okay. Okay.
Just
So was this person was or still is a significant person in your life, like somebody who you care about and love and respect?
yeah, kind of.
Okay. And so they probably feel or felt the same way about you.
Not sure about this.
Not sure. Okay. Do you believe this person had a negative intention for you?
Mm. No.
Do you believe they had a positive intention for you?
No.
You do? Okay. So they said this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that whatever they said, even though it doesn't sound good,
Mm-hmm.
that it came from a place of from a positive intention?
It was more a statement which can be used for themselves, not towards me.
So they were projecting.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's go a little bit further with this. So if that statement was really them projecting, meaning they were really talking about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the positive intention was them saying that and really meaning it about themselves?
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, it was more a warning of not being the same as them,
They
but
were
being the opposite
they
and
were
being able to have this financial autonomy without depending on others. So this is the positive intention.
so they
Thank
did it
you.
for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stated in the worst way ever.
Happens.
Really, really.
Yeah, it happens. Okay.
Okay. Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
knowing that this voice was actually positively intended,
Mm-hmm.
at least trying to serve as a warning so
Yeah.
that you would go and do this, does this now have a place in you becoming financially autonomous?
Yeah.
Okay. So what can we change about what the voice is saying so that it's now very supportive rather than the way it originally came out?
It's kind of obvious, but it's just the opposite sentence. Like you don't depend on others. You can totally be financially autonomous if you want to.
Good. Now, where can you put this voice so that it really supports you in becoming financially autonomous?
It's really interesting because the first location is from my heart. And I was talking about love at the very beginning as an important value. And it's the first location that came in my mind is here, from the heart.
So how does it feel to pursue financial autonomy from your heart?
You're really aware of what is happening as a state. Like you notice what is happening. Like that.
Mhm. So what do you think now about moving toward financial autonomy?
That is totally possible.
Okay. And do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So since this has kind of become a bigger process, I want to do a little future based. So you don't have to tell me what it is, but think about now moving toward financial autonomy from
Mhm.
your heart to fulfill
Mhm.
connection, love, clarity, and think about what do you do differently now? What's different tomorrow? What are you going to do differently in a week, in a month, in a year from now as you move toward financial autonomy? And in doing so, fulfilling freedom, connection, love, and clarity. Notice the you who's doing that. See her tomorrow, 1 week from now, 1 month from now, a year from now. What does she look like a year from now? So much closer to financial autonomy, if not already there. And more importantly, fulfilling these values of freedom, connection, love, and clarity. Is that who you want to be?
Yeah.
Do you have any objections to becoming her?
Not at all.
Great. I don't see any resistance anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you so much for volunteering. And again,
Thank you.
back how this goes for you. So feel free to report back.
Yeah. Thank you so much.